What's up? Welcome back to the Patreon section. It's your host Cyrus King, and this Patreon episode, I'm going to go into a simple fact, um, and it's one of those things that it's hard sometimes to understand because you gotta be a magician, you gotta be an occultist, and even when you are that, a lot of occultists are limited in terms of culture, or race, or some kind of, or maybe the frame of their system, right? So even then, it's not a guarantee of knowing this. But I saw a comment, and somebody was like, I don't know, I'm paraphrasing here. I may not get the exact comment, but he was like, well, how come the other systems hate, or how come the pagans hate? It was something like that on Christian magic. And I would include Jewish Kabbalistic magic when it comes to this. Sufism will be as well, but I feel like I'm talking to a Judeo-Christian audience, right? Even if you're a Muslim from America, unless you were born like that or you come from a certain culture, you're still Christian, right? I mean, you could say that, but culturally you're Christian. You just your religion is Islam, and chances of the style of Sufism that you'll be practicing. Now, I do admit, Sufism, esoteric Sufism, is probably higher than Kabbalah or Christian magic. It's not even really close. Esoteric Sufism, there's different types of Sufism, but I'm leaving them alone. So when I talk about Judeo-Christian occultists, Christian magicians, Kabbalists, their system itself doesn't have any flaws, magically. Magic, you could explain different ways, but you're calling on different intelligences to make change in the physical world. It depends on how you want to use it. You can make change within yourself as well. It could be a mental thing. You can make change within your mind. You can make change among your energy field. You can manifest. You might want certain things. It's basically manipulating the elements to cause change, whether it's in the physical world, astral world, your mental psychology. I mean, that's basically magic. And within that change, you use different tools, different forces, right? Some people use angels. Some people use law. We do with voodoo. Some people do with elementals. Some people do with ancestors. Some people deal with dead, who's not the ancestors, right? Some people do with totemism, animal spirits. It could be anything, right? And the reason why Christian and Jewish magic, especially Christian magic, is so much stronger is because if you're really practicing Christian magic, your only limitation is you. Your only limitation is your cultural mind. So yeah, if you're using the Christian magic and then you say some shit like, I don't know, voodoo is bad. And there's systems that are actually negative. Voodoo is not one of them. Voodoo is neutral. You could use it for either one. You can use it for anything you want. So you could use it for neutral, you could use it for positive, right? You could be a voodoo Christian, to be honest with you, right? So if you say that, like if you're limited based on culture, then that limits the system. But Christian magic, especially Christian Kabbalah, use the tree of life. And then this goes into Jewish Kabbalah as well, and Hermetic Kabbalah. Use the tree of life, and within using that tree, any system can be squeezed in there. So you're bigger than the system, but you could compress any system and put it into that framework and use it, right? The only reason why that doesn't get done is because we still are who we are culturally, right? And people have cultural biases, right? So it'll be like somebody coming in here, they hear this, right? They're gonna do two things. Like if they're black, depending on how they're gonna come out, they're gonna be like, Christian magic, Christianity made slavery, and they blah blah. They're gonna go to that rant, right? And I'll be like, you use bolts, right? You use guns, right? Both of them were tools to use to make slavery happen. You still use bolts and guns, even if you get shipping from another country. You don't have to ever go on a boat. You still get that product you have is from a product of shipping. And I know you guys use guns, right? Somehow, if you don't use guns, you want to call the cops and they use guns to protect you, or you're a criminal and you want to use guns for your crime, right? Just saying. So, because I have both in the front, because we could kick it on ATRs, we could kick it on Wicca, we could kick it in Christian magic, right? Because those systems I could compress and put it into my frame. That's truly why Christian magic is strong. And with the fact Kabbalistic magic, because Christian magic comes from Jewish magic. You see, that's why. When you see occult secret societies like the Rosicrucians, the Western Freemasons, and all them Odd Fellows, all them guys, Skull and Bones, Knights of Templar, Knights of Columbus, The list goes on. They're using Jewish and Christian magic, sometimes Hermetic magic. It's the same frame. It just displayed a little different, right? It's displayed a little different, but they're all from the West. Whether it's Greece, a Greek interpretation of Egyptian spirituality, Hermeticism, or Jewish Kabbalah, Christian magic. So, the Art of War says this: when you don't know yourself and you don't know your enemy, you lose 100%. When you know yourself but don't know your enemy, you win 50%. When you know yourself and know your enemy, you win 100%. For me personally, it's not a contest, but I am who I am. So for me, if you're a person who's coming on some ATR shit, you probably using a framework of 1 or 2, maybe 3, you can initiate in 1 or 2, cool. I just have more experience, more ATRs, more countries, more cultures. I was a cultist before I did ATRs. Having the foundation ATRs and then going to the cult made me a stronger occultist, but I'm not bound by that. And Obia, which is, if you had to pick any one of them, would be the closest to a natural frame I would have based on family ties and things like that, even though my family didn't really practice in the recent times. It doesn't really have a structure, doesn't really have initiation. So like half the time just saying it to people who don't know it, I'm like, look, we can just talk about ATRs if you want. We can talk about Christianity if you want. We could talk about science if you want. So if you look at the Art of War setup, I know you don't know me. That's it. So when I'm kicking it to YouTube, and I'm like, you don't even have to do all that. Like, I'm like, you don't even have to put that work in like I did. You don't even have to do that. You just get like the Jewish Kabbalah, Christian magic is a frame that's bigger than everything else because everything can be compressed in that. The tree of life is basically everything, including the multiverse itself, right? Including, once you start to get into the shells, including the realms that it's a different tree, but the structure is similar, right? If you know that structure, you got to get into the forgotten realms. So no matter what side you pick, it's the foundation and everything could be fit inside of it. So when I say everything could be fit inside of it, I could look at Yoruba and put Yoruba cosmology in this. I could look at Voodoo cosmology and put it in this. Now, the reason why I do admit it's not always good to mix systems, right? So there will still have to be some precautions that's taken from that. But a lot of times it's not good to mix systems because of the ancestral lunar part of the systems. It'll be like Kemet, right? Kemet is in Africa. And it's a large part of Kemetic spirituality is African spirituality, for sure. But I wouldn't really classify real Kemetic spirituality as ancestral. Right? That's why, some people can hate on Egyptians. Say, they can't use Egyptian magic because they're not Egyptian. They're Egyptian. There's Egyptians who forgot their ways. And Egypt was always a mixed place, to be honest. They could have had a time, if you want to say that they were black or more African, but it's been mixed quickly. It got mixed quickly. Egypt was conquered like 5 times, literally. And now one of them was Nubians, right? So you kind of say they started off more related to Nubians, and Nubians conquered them. So would I say that the sub-Saharan African part is underrated in Egypt? It is, but I'll say a different reason. I'm not going to say the Egyptians now are not Egyptian. That's a little much, right? But part of the reason why it doesn't work for them is because Egyptian forces are not really ancestral. There's parts of it that is, but it's cosmic. So you have to kind of already be an occultist to do that, to understand that, to activate it. That's the reason why he doesn't see magical results. You might use it as psychological. The metanet is great. You can use it as a psychological tool. You could use it to better your life mentally. But occult-wise, that's where it might fall short because of that. So, it's interesting because I know some people might, well, how come? Well, that's why. I'm telling you, other people would come here and they will talk about pagan traditions. I'm like, listen, I'm technically a pagan too. You think if I go around a traditional Christian, they're gonna say you're Christian? Nah. But we are bigger. We can absorb you, but you haven't absorbed us. And that your only defense could be, well, you were stolen from whatever, Egypt or Sumeria and all this other stuff. My answer to that? I mean, who's really practicing Egyptian and Sumerian magic? No shade. I'm just saying, you can talk all that shit you want. Who's practicing that? You can come up with some, you could come up with, it was outsiders, blah, blah, blah. Motherfuckers still practicing voodoo. The pygmies, Pygmies are older than the Egyptians. They still got their shit. They still got their rituals and their magic. Fucking Bushmen in South Africa, older than both of them. They still got their shit. I don't need to hear all that. So, we don't know what reason why the pagans be hating on Christian magicians, because Christian magicians are more hated by the church than the pagans are. That's why. That's why the normal canonized Christians, right? Christians who are obsessed with only canon, only the Bible, no Gnostic books, no oral tradition, nothing. That's why they want to present themselves as Christians only, when Christianity is a universal religion, a universal system, universal way of life. There's all kinds of Christians. You could be a Christian and believe in saints. You could be another Christian and don't. You could be a Christian and believe Christ was God. You could be a Christian and believe Christ is the Son of God. You could be a Gnostic/Christian who believe Christ is not the Son of God or God, but he was so powerful magically you thought he was God. They're all Christians. You could be Christian and be like, my ancestral stuff, I'm gonna go to church on Sunday and the week, I got my old Isha shrine I'm gonna do. Right? I gotta serve this Loa. And Apollo, the Muerto, the Bible doesn't really get into as much necroscience and the dead. So if I'm into Apollo, amen, that's to take care of my family. You can still be Christian. Just saying. Mainstream Christian may say no, but that's because they've been bamboozled, and because of that, people have a different interpretation. People's understanding of Christian is much more limited than the label really is. The follower of Christ, the King of Kings, the King of Kings that precedes even this planet. Cyrus King. Till next time. Peace.